I'm going to keep this straightforward because when you're eyeing a pre-built gaming PC, the biggest fear is ending up with a machine that looks good on paper but feels like a compromise once you plug it in. If you've ever bought a desktop that promised 4K performance and then stalled on a newer title, you'll appreciate the level of detail I'm about to give you. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'll walk through what the iBUYPOWER Element SE actually delivers in a typical home setup, where it shines, and where you might want to look elsewhere. First, let's talk about the kind of decision you're making. A gaming PC in this price range has to balance three things: raw performance, future-proofing, and the whole package experience that includes things like a keyboard, mouse, and Windows already installed. Most buyers at this level are either stepping up from a laptop or an older desktop, or they're looking for a plug-and-play system that won't require a separate GPU purchase. The hesitation usually comes from two questions: will the hardware keep up with the next 2 years of game releases, and will the machine be quiet enough for a shared living space? Those are the lenses I'm using as I dig into the Element SE. When the box arrived, the first thing I noticed was the size of the chassis. It's a mid-tower that fits comfortably on a standard desk without crowding the workspace. The front panel has a single USB-C port, a couple of USB-A ports, and the power button is recessed enough to avoid accidental presses. Inside, the components are laid out in a fairly conventional fashion. The AMD Ryzen 7 5700 sits on the motherboard with a decent cooler. The NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5060 card occupies the primary PCIe slot, and the 1TB NVMe SSD is mounted directly on the motherboard. The build didn't require any extra cables or adapters, so the first boot was truly plug-and-play. Windows 11 Home loaded in a minute, and the included iBUYPOWER keyboard and mouse were ready to go out of the box, no driver installations needed. Performance-wise, the real test is how the machine handles the games you actually play, not just synthetic benchmarks. I ran a mix of titles that most gamers encounter day to day: an open-world shooter at 1080p with medium-high settings, a competitive battle royale at 1440p Ultra, and a newer RPG that leans heavily on CPU cores. In the shooter, the RTX 5060 delivered a smooth 7080 frames per second, which is more than enough for a 60Hz monitor and gives a comfortable buffer for occasional spikes. The Battle Royale, which tends to tax both GPU and memory, stayed around 60 frames per second on ultra settings at 1440p, but dropping a few texture details to high pushed it comfortably above 70 frames per second. The RPG, which uses the Ryzen 7's 8 cores for AI and physics, hovered at 5560 frames per second on high settings, not a blockbuster frame rate, but still playable without feeling sluggish. In all cases, load times were near instant thanks to the 1TB NVMe drive, meaning you spend more time in the game and less waiting at menus. Outside of gaming, the machine holds up as a decent workstation. The 16GB of DDR4 3200 RAM is sufficient for streaming while gaming, and I could run OBS alongside a game without noticeable stutter. The SSD gave me plenty of room for the OS, a few large titles, and a sandbox of creative apps, and I didn't feel any slowdowns when swapping between them. If you're the type who edits video or renders 3D models occasionally, the Ryzen 7 provides enough multi-threaded horsepower to keep the workflow smooth, though you'll notice the GPU limits if you try to render at 4K resolution. For everyday tasks like web browsing, media consumption, or light productivity, the system is more than capable. Now let's break down the practical strengths. The CPU is a solid choice for its price point. 8 cores and 16 threads give it a comfortable lead over older i5 or i7 models in the same bracket. The RTX 5060, while not a flagship, offers ray tracing support and DLSS, which means you can enable those features in supported games without a massive hit to frame rates. The 8GB VRAM on the card is adequate for 1080p and most 1440p scenarios today, but you'll start to feel the squeeze in a few years when texture packs grow larger. The inclusion of a full-size mechanical keyboard and a responsive mouse removes the need to buy peripherals separately, and the Windows 11 pre-install saves you the hassle of setting up a fresh OS. Finally, the 1TB NVMe SSD provides fast storage that eliminates the bottleneck you often see in older HDD-based builds.